Good morning. This is your today's headlines briefing from the New York Times for Friday, July 24, 2026. I'm your host, and we have a packed edition today, from sweeping new tariffs and a dramatic courtroom showdown over press freedom, to a rejected ceasefire in the Iran war, rising homelessness in Los Angeles, and a fascinating look at how China is rewriting the rules of artificial intelligence soft power. We'll also hear about a Marine-turned-journalist seeking closure with a former Taliban enemy, the latest zigzag in Zelensky's wartime leadership, and why popcorn buckets have become a $100 million business. Plus, Fields medalists, a recovering bald eagle webcam star, and a linguistic shift that makes Google it sound positively vintage. Let's dive in. We begin with the top story. The Trump administration has launched a new round of tariffs aimed at more than 80 countries, effective as of 12:01 a.m. today. These duties, ranging from 10 to 12.5%, are tied to what the administration says are imports of goods made with forced labor. They replace a global 10% tariff that expired at the exact same moment, a tariff the president imposed back in February after the Supreme Court struck down his earlier levies. As Anna Swanson reports, this latest move provides fresh evidence of the administration's determination to maintain an expansive protectionist policy despite repeated legal challenges. The system is complicated, and it's the latest chapter in a trade war that has seen effective tariff rates change 45 times in the past 18 months, an average of once every 12 days. That legal pressure was on full display in a Manhattan courtroom yesterday, where a federal judge grilled Justice Department lawyers for nearly an hour over subpoenas seeking phone records and grand jury testimony from New York Times journalists. The subpoenas related to reporting on the security capabilities of President Trump's new Qatari-donated Air Force One jet. The Times called them an attempt to intimidate the free press. Judge Arun Subramanian raised pointed questions about the government's handling of the matter, and the Justice Department ultimately withdrew the subpoenas. Michael Grinbaum and Jonah Bromwich report that the government acted only after that intense judicial scrutiny. Overseas, Iran has rejected a U.S. ceasefire proposal carried to Tehran by Iraqi Prime Minister Ali al-Zaidi. The details of the offer weren't immediately clear, but Iranian officials said it was the only proposal on the table. The mediation effort came as President Trump threatened to escalate the war and target Iran's critical infrastructure. Farnaz Fasihai and Erica Sullivan report that after publication, the Iraqi government denied the account in a statement on social media, without elaborating. The war has now claimed the lives of 18 U.S. service members, according to the Pentagon's latest count, though that number itself has been in flux. Just Wednesday, the Defense Department's casualties website listed 18 deaths. By Thursday, it had been lowered to 14. 3 military officials and a Pentagon spokesman gave conflicting explanations for the change, saying the Trump administration decided to remove 4 service members killed this past weekend, 3 in Jordan, 1 in northern Iraq, because their deaths occurred after the president declared a ceasefire. Helene Cooper, Lara Jakes, and John Ismay have that story. Turning to India, Prime Minister Narendra Modi finds himself caught off guard by a sudden explosion of student protests over economic failings. As Alex Travelli reports from New Delhi, Modi, powerful and acutely image-conscious, entering his 13th year in office, had been focused on managing shortages of imported oil and gas sharpened by the U.S.-Israeli war against Iran. But a different economic pressure has now ignited a youth movement he didn't anticipate, and there are no easy solutions to the problems behind it. In Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelensky has executed another dizzying U-turn, this one involving military leadership and strategy. Andrew Kramer, reporting from Kiev, notes that before his presidency, Zelensky played Napoleon in a comedic film as a headstrong idiot who refused to change course. As president, he's been the opposite, flexible to a fault, so often reversing decisions on appointments and policies that confusion and personnel churn have become risks in his wartime leadership. In the latest turmoil over the past week and a half, Zelensky sidelined his top general, then reinstated him, a zigzag that analysts say could weaken his position. And in a remarkable personal essay, Thomas Gibbons Neff, a former Marine and former New York Times reporter who covered the wars in Afghanistan and Ukraine, writes about returning to Afghanistan one last time to speak with a Taliban commander he once fought. "I've had a hand in killing around 6 people. Maybe 7, he writes. I don't know if one man bled out on the side of the road or was taken to a doctor. I think about him. He sought out Mullah Abdul Rahim Gulab in Marja, searching for answers, and perhaps closure, after years tied to that country. Here in the United States, Los Angeles's homeless population has grown again after 2 years of decline, a 3.4% increase between early 2025 and early 2026, bringing the total to 45,194 people, according to the latest point-in-time count. Jill Cowan and Sean Hubler report that the rise could hurt Mayor Karen Bass as she runs for re-election, setting her up for fresh criticism in an already bruising campaign. The human cost of the Iran war comes into sharp focus through the story of Sergeant Michael Emmanuel Swinton, one of those 18 fallen soldiers. J.C. Fortin writes that on his final calls home to North Carolina, the strain of a year-long deployment was showing. He hadn't been sleeping, his appetite was diminishing, he longed to return home. His wife, Jamia, could hear the fear creeping into his voice. Drone attacks at Erbil Air Base in northern Iraq kept coming. There was no peace, he told her. He was killed in recent days. In Colorado, an ICE contractor faces charges after shooting a protester outside a detention center. Brandon Booth, working at the GEO Group-operated ICE processing center in Aurora, allegedly fired a single shot from his personal pistol on July 16, hitting a college student in the foot. He was charged with assault and fired by GEO Group. Mac Liederman and John McDonald have the details. On the political front, Supreme Court Justice Elena Kagan offered a spirited defense of her conservative colleagues at an annual gathering of judges and lawyers in Washington state. "I think that is a bad rap," she said of criticism that the court has rubber-stamped President Trump's agenda. She acknowledged the court is very conservative and does things she finds deeply wrong, but insisted it has stood up to the administration in key cases. Abby Van Sickle reports from Bellevue, Washington. Democratic voters, meanwhile, keep defying the party establishment. The House Democratic campaign arm has stepped up interventions in contested primaries and suffered its third primary defeat in 2 months. This week, Dr. Amish Shah, a moderate Democrat, won a House primary in a battleground Arizona district over a different moderate heavily backed by the party's campaign arm. "As you can clearly see, I wasn't exactly my party's pick," Dr. Shah told reporters. Katie Glueck reports on a party sharply divided over its path forward, but united in frustration with its leadership. In business, the tariff story gets deeper analysis. The president has unveiled a complicated system to forge ahead with his trade war after the Supreme Court struck down his original levies. And China is rewriting the soft power playbook for the AI age. Steve Lohr, reporting from Seoul, explains that in the Cold War, soft power meant American movies and music. Today, China is promoting open, low-cost artificial intelligence technology. Xi Jinping recently described open-source AI as key to China's ambitions to shape global development of the technology, calling it a rare and historical opportunity to spread its benefits worldwide. Then there's the astonishingly lucrative market for popcorn buckets, or as the industry calls them, collectible concession vessels. Once, a tub of popcorn was just a tub of popcorn. Now, these branded buckets could make one theater chain more than $100 million. Salty, buttery, and a serious revenue stream. In technology, Intel is benefiting from a shift in AI spending. The Silicon Valley chipmaker's revenue rose 25% in the latest quarter, its fastest growth in 15 years, as AI firms increasingly buy central processing units, or CPUs, alongside the more famous GPUs. And we put AI agents to the test, deploying them to act as office workers. They were capable of performing some assigned tasks, but not all of them. The experiment reveals both the promise and the current limits of autonomous AI agents. A federal judge has extended a pause on the Paramount-Warner Bros. Merger, blocking the companies from closing the acquisition through at least mid-August while she considers 2 lawsuits challenging it. David McCabe reports that Judge Araceli Martinez-Oldwin froze the deal for 14 days on Monday after a group of states sued citing antitrust concerns. A hearing is set for August 3. In New York, a 51-year-old man was arrested after stabbing 2 people in broad daylight on the Upper West Side near Central Park. Police are investigating whether the attacks were hate crimes. Both victims are expected to survive. Transportation Secretary Sean P. Duffy has declared renaming Penn Station an administration priority. In a letter to Senate committee leaders, he listed it as such, but hasn't offered any options for a new name. President Trump had said people suggested renaming it for him. Patrick McGeehan reports the Department of Transportation took control last year of the Gateway Development Commission that oversees the station's redevelopment. And Salman Rushdie took the stand Thursday in the trial of his attacker, recalling the August 2022 stabbing at a literary festival in western New York that left him blind in one eye, with damaged nerves and scars all over his body. Mark Sommer and Santal Nurkar report from Buffalo that Rushdie testified about the lake of blood he lay in after being stabbed 15 times. In 1989, the Iranian government had called for his death after the Satanic Verses. After years in hiding, he had resumed a normal life until that day. In arts, Kevin Hart stars in 72 Hours, playing an ad executive who tags along on a bachelor party weekend to learn about the younger generation. Glenn Kenny writes it proves a less than healthy move, a comedic take on middle-age aches and the slings and arrows of getting older. At the Venice Film Festival, a Rupert Murdoch biopic titled Ink, directed by Danny Boyle and starring Guy Pearce, will compete for the Golden Lion alongside new films from Martin McDonagh, Werner Herzog, Casey Affleck, and Lee Chang-dong. And a Swedish Viking center says its replica Viking ship was damaged during filming of Christopher Nolan's epic, The Odyssey, referred to in production as Charlie's Tale. The Varmlands Viking Center agreed to hire out the vessel, but when it was returned damaged months later, the movie company was contractually obliged to pay for repairs. Now the center is seeking compensation. Alex Marshall has that story. In books, our critics and editors offer 6 new recommendations this week, including the final installment of Colson Whitehead's Harlem Crime Trilogy. Valeria Luiselli shares that her favorite obscure book is Pliny's Natural History, 37 volumes long, meant for skimming and skipping. Her own new road trip novel is Beginning, Middle, End. And Elizabeth Egan recommends 11 celebrity memoirs read by their authors. There's nothing like hearing a famous person's life story in their own, instantly recognizable voice. Food this week is loud, 19 extra crunchy recipes, from chickpea fata to Frito pie noisy, crackly dishes to satisfy cravings. In science, an FDA advisory panel supported lifting restrictions on 4 peptides, despite the agency's own scientists arguing against allowing broad access to unproven drugs the agency had banned 3 years ago. Christina Jewett and Dana Smith report the hearing may set Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. on a collision course with agency experts. 4 young mathematicians received the prestigious Fields Medals awarded once every 4 years to researchers under 40. Kenneth Chang reports this year's recipients, announced at the International Congress of Mathematics in Philadelphia, solved cutting-edge problems in algebraic geometry and partial differential equations, including a fundamental equation describing the motion of gases. 2 were born in China, Yu Deng of the University of Chicago and Hong. And Jackie, the bald eagle webcam star from Big Bear Valley, California, is recovering after an attack by other eagles. Alexandra Petrie writes that Jackie and her mate Shadow became internet celebrities through a livestream from their nest atop a 120-foot Jeffrey pine. The attack prompted a rescue that revealed unrelated health issues, drawing an outpouring of support from her decade-long online audience. In wellness, the Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality, which slowed new grants last year, is now stopping existing research awards. Katrina Miller tells the story of Dr. Amy Waterman, whose 3-year kidney care transformation program was set to launch in California clinics before funding was cut on July 15. "We really believe our work will matter to improving care," she said. And Senator Bill Cassidy, the Republican chairman of the Senate Health Committee and a physician, announced he will support Dr. Erica Schwartz for CDC director after a page on the agency's website about vaccines and autism was modified to address his objections. The page still asserts a link, for which there is no scientific evidence, but now includes a statement that scientists continue to study the issue. Cheryl Gay Stolberg reports. Travel: the World Cup was billed as 104 Super Bowls in economic impact. Some host cities struck gold, others fizzled. Terirom Zazua explores whether travelers should give up on summer in Western Europe as rising temperatures make it a risk. Even those sticking with plans agree, more air conditioning would help. Janice Campbell, a longtime Paris visitor, cut her trip short after 3 weeks. Unthinkable, she called it. And for a different pace, 36 hours on the Oregon coast promises pensive beauty, fresh seafood, local art, and outdoorsy diversions. Real estate: a Queens resident tired of renting buys her own slice of the outdoors after growing up with both a front porch and a back deck. Fair housing groups are suing HUD over funding changes they say will vastly curtail fair housing enforcement. Most violations are investigated by small nonprofits relying on HUD grants. And in a Chicago suburb, a novel public-private partnership raffled off the chance for local residents to buy houses below market rate. Fashion and style brings modern love on the Appalachian Trail, a hiker, 2 men, and a love triangle she didn't plan on. Plus a mini-vows column about Michaela Verilian and Christopher Sidwell, who built Sweet Fire Cafe and Studio and a life in Brooklyn after matching on Hinge. And another couple, KDT Marietta and Michael Wade Smith, brought together by a speech at a Martin Luther King Jr. banquet, though it took him 3 years and their wedding to respond to her email. We note the passing of Clint Riley, the feared and respected California political consultant who advised Nancy Pelosi and Dianne Feinstein, ran for mayor of San Francisco, and bought the San Francisco Examiner. He was 79. In the magazine, Sophie Hegney writes that Google it makes you sound old, search it up is the new vernacular as online research evolves. And in Opinion, Natasha Sarin argues Trump's tariff runaround defies courts and common sense. A guest essay says Gen Z fell out of love with work and the author doesn't blame them. Joby Warwick profiles Carlos the Jackal, the once most famous terrorist in the world, now an old man in a French maximum security prison muttering, "I should have killed a few more people." Frank Bruni and Bret Stephens debate whether anyone can trust the current crew with anything, particularly Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. Ross Douthat hosts Elbridge Colby, a Pentagon official who argues Trump's grand strategy makes America stronger because people can no longer take the United States for granted. Jason Su writes that America should trounce China in the AI race by building and deploying open-weight models at scale. And Lieutenant General Russell Honore warns that Haiti is a war zone and mass deportations will further destabilize a country in crisis. That's your briefing for Friday, July 24, 2026. Thank you for listening. We'll be back tomorrow with the latest headlines. Have a good day.